This is the 41st chapter called Satsang. You already know part of that word. Satsang comes from Satsanga, and I've named the thing that we do here a Sangha. A Satsanga is a Sangha that is true. Sat, true in the sense of, well, I have to tell you what Sangha means. Sangha means literally an association. Although the English word might have some, very formal connotation of that word, this is just the most literal way of using the term association. There is just a group of people that associate with each other. There is some relationship. And a satsang means an association of truth, where we associate with the truth within each other. And of course, that is the goal for this Sangha too. But I felt like because this term is typically used to describe the communities of great, wonderful spiritual organizations, that I didn't want to assume that the place I host here is comparable whatsoever. But it's my goal for it to be a satsang rather than a kusang. A kusang would be a bad association. Anyway, we're diving into a chapter with that title. May this reading put your mind to sleep and awaken your heart. Autumn of 2004. I was 2 or 3 years old. As a large Bougainvillea, or Bougainvillea, still don't know how to pronounce this word, that refers to some kind of beautiful flowery bush, I'm sure, in Swamiji's garden grew taller. It began to bend from the weight of its own branches, and the dark and frequently muddy area beneath and behind it encroached on the garden's grassy meeting space. Surveying the tree in the large damp area, Swamiji declared, "We will lift the Bougainvillea up and build a hut beneath it. I will have meetings in the hut." "Lift up?" I asked. "How do you lift up a tree?" Clearly he had a vision, and once a vision takes root in his mind, it cannot be uprooted. Over the years, I have seen that everything in his mind's eye eventually finds its way into 3-dimensional reality. So, a few weeks later, after consulting with experts to ensure that no harm would befall his beloved tree, a card jack was wedged between the soft ground and the underside of the trunk as it bent heavily from the weight of its branches. Slowly, with instructions on the minute adjustments necessary, Swamiji seemed to be feeling the tree as it was lifted. A bit to the right, a bit to the left, the tree was hoisted up successfully. And I will continue reading in just a few seconds as I turn off the alarm on my phone. So thank you for your patience. Wooden poles were erected, and the makings of a roof began. A slab of cement was laid on top of the wooden poles, all the while ensuring that the tree was not only untouched, but also had plenty of room to breathe. "Come a bit further away," Swamiji instructed when the roof layers got too close. Then a floor was laid of gobar, a traditional Indian mix of straw and cow dung. I derive great amusement from informing people that they're sitting on cow dung. And eco-friendly designers covered the 3 walls and the roof with bamboo. Thus, a bamboo and cow dung hut was built with the large Bougainvillea, and the 2 smaller trees growing through it, exiting through holes in the roof, or exiting through holes in the roof. But I'm sure they're excited to have a new home. Their branches now grow comfortably toward the sky, and when they get heavy, they rest on the roof of the hut. Each evening, following the sacred Arti, crowds gathered in Swamiji's hut for darshan to receive his blessings and, frequently, to ask questions. Satsang literally means in association with truth, or in the presence of truth. This is the unchanging, eternal truth of who we are, the nature of the universe, and our relationship to it. Why are we here? How do we overcome our egos, our fears and desires? What happens after death? How to live a spiritual life in the world with a job and family? These sorts of topics arise in satsang. On one particular evening, there was a large gathering of devotees in his garden post-Arti, including the regular mix of individuals and families from around the world, and a group from the United States that had come for a retreat. I sat next to Swamiji, as was the norm, so I could be available if he needed a quick translation of a question in vernacular English into Hindi, or if anyone requested his presence at an event and he needed to know if he'd be free that day. I carried his calendar engraved upon my brain, and because it had grown to be so, I would be there, next to him, and even if he didn't need anything, I'd stop asking why. I didn't want to jinx it, and my prayer simply continued to be, "Oh God, please make me worthy." On this night, one of the Americans asked a question about anger and forgiveness. She hadn't used any unusual words or waxed endlessly or shared her life story to justify her question. She simply asked, "Can you speak on forgiveness and how to be free of anger?" "Sadhvi ji," Pujya Swamiji said, followed by a long silence. Was he taking a breath before asking me a question? "Sadhvi ji," he asked again, and closed his eyes to meditate. When I looked at him, wondering where the rest of the sentence had gone, his eyes were closed and his hands rested palms up on his crossed legs in Dhyan Mudra, the hand posture for meditation, tips of his thumbs touching the tips of his first finger, with the other 3 fingers, middle, ring, and pinky, stretched out over the knee. My eyes followed the direction his fingers pointed toward the back of the garden, hoping that was a clue, as though my instruction would be inscribed on the wall. There was only a bush of fragrant white jasmine filling the garden. No answers. I looked back at the crowd. It was clear that they were expecting me to answer the question. He had turned it over, fully and completely, for me to handle. The unspoken rest of the sentence was, "You answer this." Over the preceding decade, I had written several articles on Swamiji's behalf on topics related to anger and other emotions, and on the importance of forgiveness. I had also written 2 books on his behalf, Drops of Nectar and Grace in the Home, containing his wisdom, channeled through my slowly improving mind and hands on aspects related to living day to day as spiritually as possible. I had listened to him give countless responses to such questions in the past. Do you want to be in peace or in pieces? Do you want to be better or bitter? The choice is yours. You can make your life heaven or hell. It is up to you. As in his teaching to me during the first days in Rishikesh about having to draw the line myself, Pujya Swamiji emphasizes the most fundamental form of self-empowerment. Your own happiness is in your own hands. No junk mail, he urges. When junk comes to your email inbox, you delete it. You don't read it or save it. When it comes to your eyes or your life, you must do the same. The fact that someone sends you junk mail does not mean you have to accept it. just hit delete and move on. So I knew the teachings. Even if I couldn't implement them all the time, I could write about them with ease. But now I had to answer verbally. I was already doing a lot of public speaking, and I knew Swamiji's teachings well, so I wasn't concerned. I began to arrange the index cards of my brain. What points to start with? What were the main ideas? What order to present this teaching? And as I tried to arrange the cards in my mind, I froze. I closed my eyes. Maybe if I weren't distracted by their faces, I could get these index cards properly arranged in my mind and give a coherent and appropriate, hopefully even intelligent answer. But although I couldn't see their eyes, I could feel them. I shuffled and reshuffled the cards in my brain, but nothing worked. I couldn't arrange them fast enough. Maybe he's playing a trick on me, I thought. I've heard lots of stories of gurus doing that. To hit at one's ego, to dissolve illusions, to test one's faith, for all sorts of reasons. Just because Swamiji hadn't played a trick on me before didn't mean he wouldn't now. Maybe it's a mirage, an optical illusion my guru had created to show me how stuck I still am in my own ego. Maybe if I just squeezed my eyes tightly shut, I could make the illusion disappear. So I tried. I squeezed my eyes tightly shut, wrinkling my face in a way that must have looked really funny to those watching, but who had the graciousness never to ask? What were you doing when you scrunched up your face? I think I put the emphasis in a funny part of that sentence. Wrinkling my face in a way that must have really looked funny to those watching, but who had the graciousness to never to ask, what were you doing when you scrunched up your face? Then I opened my eyes, expecting the garden hut to be empty except for me and my laughing guru, who would say something like, "You are not ready for anything. Look how nervous I made you just by putting you on the spot in front of an imaginary group of people." But they were still there, still looking at me. No one had budged. I turned to my left and saw Puja Swamiji, still deep in meditation. He wasn't going to bail me out. So I closed my eyes again. I'll figure this out. It isn't rocket science. She's asking about anger and forgiveness. I can do this. I began to search for the index cards again, but I couldn't even read them. My heart beat faster and my palms began to sweat. Finally, I surrendered. I cannot do this, I said to Swamiji in my mind. I don't have it in me. I am so sorry. You have given me a task and I can't complete it. I don't have this answer. My breath slowed. I was no longer stressed. I was rather resigned to the deep and painful awareness that I did not have the answer. I could not pull it forth from any corner of my brain. I wasn't up to the task. In my mind, I bowed at Swamiji's feet in my mind and repeated, I don't have it in me. I cannot do it. I am so sorry. I gently opened my eyes, ready to sit in my own paucity of intelligence. That's another new word. Paucity, P-A-U-C-I-T-Y. It would be humbling, but I was resigned to acknowledge my own lack. I opened my eyes and took a deep breath. And as the breath escaped my lips, my voice poured out along with it. First of all, I heard myself saying, without knowing where the words were coming from, it's crucial to remember that forgiveness doesn't mean we condone someone's actions. Forgiveness doesn't mean what they did is okay or right. Forgiveness simply means that I need to move on. We forgive because, regardless of what someone may have done to us in the past, we deserve to be free today. Anger is the chain that keeps us bound to that person and their action. Our forgiveness does not absolve them of their crimes. We are not the karma police who get to decide what punishment someone should receive for what action they've taken. Until and unless God says to you, "Would you mind keeping track for me of who deserves what? I don't want to forget to punish this guy." Unless God tells you that, you can be pretty sure the law of karma will function properly without you standing over it. A seed that is planted does not need us to stand there and remind us what type of tree to become. It knows. That intelligence is present in the seed. The tree and the fruit it will bear are present in the very seed. In the same way, the seed of abuse or betrayal that someone has planted is going to grow into a tree in his or her front yard, the fruit of which they must eat. We forgive because not to forgive is a refusal to become who we are, a refusal to step up to the plate of our own lives. I don't remember the rest of what I said, but after the satsang, many of them came up to me and said, "We are so touched by your wisdom." Many of the Indians present touched my feet. My wisdom? I asked myself. No, something else had happened. As I stood and folded my hands in namaste to those who came to thank me, I felt as though I had just come out of a deep meditation. It took a while for my eyes to fully focus, and that line of proprioception, where I end and the world, was still blurry. But I hadn't been meditating. I had been speaking. My eyes had been wide open, my lips had been moving, and the words had been coming out. What had happened, I understood later, and the realization has simply crystallized over the years, is that in that very moment of bending low at Swamiji's feet in my mind, in that moment of knowing that I did not have the answer, that it wasn't in me, I created so much space in my experience of self that something divine flowed in. The universe abhors a vacuum, we're told in physics class. It applies spiritually as well. When we can get our own egos, our own sense of what we know, who we are, what we can do, out of the way, something beautiful can come in to occupy the space. Long before the energy that flowed in poured out of my mouth, touching others, it touched me. It is the presence of the divine connecting me fully to the knowing of the universe. It was true that day in 2004, and it's still true today. When I can allow the walls of my separate self to be malleable, permeable, and unfrightened enough to be stretched and bent, the presence of the divine world flows in. That is still the way I do all of my speaking. Even today, I don't plan in advance. I don't try to figure out what I know on the subject. I focus. Eyes closed, breathe deeply, and I just try to get out of the way as much as I can. Whether it's satsang or a keynote address, the only way what I say touches people is when I get out of the way enough so the divine flows into and through me, touching and filling me, and then, as my cup very literally runneth over, it spills out of my mouth into the space around me. Public speaking has become my favorite thing to do. It's an opportunity for me to be bathed by a flow of grace and divine presence that feels distinctly different from how I live the rest of my life. It's as though the I with which I typically identify, a spiritually informed but still solid I, gets put to sleep, and while it's out of commission, my body becomes an empty playground for grace to come and dance. That it benefits others is a wondrous byproduct. The joy of its presence touches and nourishes me to no end. Thank you for listening. to the 41st chapter of Hollywood to the Himalayas. Next time we'll read about the Encyclopedia of Hinduism. I hope you enjoyed that reading. So too, whenever those around us may benefit from speaking from the heart, we shall step aside for that outpour of divine grace to flow so easily. Just having trust in yourself, your true higher self that is connected to the universe. It'll know what to say so that you don't have to. Namaste.